Welcome back, focused learners, to the Explainer. Go ahead and grab your mental notebooks because today we are stepping straight into the lecture hall. We are tackling an absolutely foundational piece of academic linguistics. Tema 32, La expresión del presente, formas y usos. Or translated to English, the expression of the present, its forms and uses. We're going to completely deconstruct the mechanics of English present tense usage, moving from high-level descriptive theory all the way down to the unconscious phonetic rules your mouth actually follows every single day.
Here is our syllabus for today's explainer. First, the modern verb phrase. Second, referential versus semantic time. Third, the morphology of present tenses. And finally, fourth, the phonology of the S form. Okay, section 1, the modern verb phrase. Redefining the verb. Let's dive right into this. Before we can even talk about the present tense, we kind of need to dismantle some of the elementary assumptions you might still be carrying around about how verbs actually function in the language. Think back to your traditional grade school grammar classes. The verb was historically conceptualized as this broad class of words serving to denote the performance of an action, right? Or the existence of a state of being. You were likely taught that run is an action and is a state. Simple enough? But modern descriptive linguistics, spearheaded by seminal scholars like Randolph Quirk and Sidney Greenbaum in their comprehensive grammar framework, has completely shifted this paradigm. Today, the verb is defined structurally and much, much more precisely. It's not just an action word, it is the structural anchor. It functions as the predicate introducer within a clause. Now, you might be wondering, why does this matter? Well, because defining a verb merely as an action totally fails to capture its syntactic power to organize the entire sentence around it. The verb literally dictates what subjects and objects are even permitted to exist in the sentence. It's the boss.
To truly understand the expression of present time, you absolutely must recognize that the modern verb phrase is far from a single monolithic entity. It's like a giant puzzle. It's actually a highly sophisticated intersection of 5 distinct grammatical systems operating simultaneously. Every time you speak, you're basically acting as a real-time linguistic computer. Let's break these down. First up, we have tense, which in English is strictly a binary morphological choice, past versus present. Notice there's no structural future tense here. That's a major concept we'll touch on later. Second, analytic mood. This categorizes the phrase as modal or non-modal. Are you expressing a fact, like I walk, or a possibility, using a modal auxiliary like I must walk, or I can walk? Third, we have the perfect aspect. This system communicates whether an action is completed in relation to another point in time, heavily utilizing the auxiliary verb have, as in I have walked. Fourth, the progressive aspect. This indicates ongoing, continuous action, leaning on the auxiliary be and the I and jing participle, as in I am walking. And finally, the fifth system is voice, which tells us if the phrase is active, where the subject does the action, or passive, where the subject receives it, like the walk was taken. When you string all these together, you can create a massively complex verb phrase. Consider this sentence. The book must have been being read. That is a modal, perfect, progressive, passive verb phrase. Every single time you construct even a simple present tense verb phrase, your brain is seamlessly navigating the intersection of these 5 distinct systems to output the correct grammatical structure. It's honestly mind-blowing.
Moving right along to section 2, referential versus semantic time, time and tense. Let's see how this builds into the concept of time itself. As noted heavily in the scholarly literature by linguists like Jeffrey Leach, one of the absolute fundamental challenges in English linguistics is learning how to conceptually separate the universal idea of time from the grammatical concept of tense. The first half of that challenge requires understanding referential time. I want you to visualize a literal mathematical timeline in your mind, much like the physicist Hans Reichenbach's temporal models. From a referential perspective, time is a strict, physical, linear progression. On this line, the concept of now acts as a definitive razor-thin boundary. It is the exact, microscopic, single point that definitively separates what has already happened, the past, from what has not yet happened, the future. In referential time, the present has almost no duration. It's just the fleeting instant of the current moment. But as we know, human language doesn't always play by strict mathematical or physical rules. And this brilliantly illustrates semantic time, a concept heavily explored by functional linguists like Michael Holliday. Semantically speaking, the present is considered the most general inclusive category. It's not merely a microscopic point on a line. Instead, it's a broad, elastic stretch of time. Semantic time encompasses the moment of speaking, sure, but it stretches out to capture realities that extend far backward into the past and far forward into the future. Consider eternal truths like water boils at 100 degrees Celsius. Semantically, this is a present reality, even though water boiled in the past and will definitely boil in the future. Or think about the historic present used in storytelling, such as, so I'm walking down the street yesterday and this guy comes up to me. We are using the grammatical present tense to describe a semantic past. The semantic present is incredibly expansive and flexible. So what does this all mean? Why does this distinction matter for us? Because for anyone pursuing true linguistic mastery, or perhaps studying the pedagogy of teaching English as a second language, you need a dual focus. You cannot merely study morphology, the physical structural form of the words, without also studying semantics, the actual communicative use and meaning in context. If you only teach a student that present tense morphology equals current referential time, they are going to be utterly confused when they encounter a sentence like, my train leaves tomorrow at noon. To fully grasp how speakers successfully navigate the relationship between grammatical structures and their temporal reality, you have to completely marry the physical form with the semantic use. Okay, Section 3, Morphology of Present Tenses, Structural Forms. Having looked at the abstract semantic theory, we're now going to shift our focus down into the mechanical structural forms that actually build the present tense. The construction of present tenses in English relies on highly specific morphological inflections. As corpus linguists like Douglas Bieber have extensively documented, there are three primary forms we rely on to modify the base verb. We have the S form, used in third-person singular agreements like he runs. We have the ing form, technically known as the present participle, which drives our progressive aspects, like running. And we have the ed form, or the past participle, which, while named past, is absolutely crucial for constructing present perfect realities, like has walked. These are the physical suffixes, the literal building blocks we attach to base verbs to alter their temporal reality in a sentence. So the crucial point is how we utilize that very first inflection in everyday speech. The simple present is constructed using the bare base form of the verb for almost all subjects. I walk, you walk, we walk, they walk. However, the third-person singular, he, she, or it, demands a morphological change, the mandatory addition of the s suffix. He walks. Now, why does English isolate the third-person singular this way? It's actually a really cool historical remnant. Old English had a highly complex system of verb conjugations for almost every person and number. Over centuries, those endings eroded away, leaving the base form for almost everything, but the third-person singular just stubbornly retained its inflection. It seems incredibly straightforward when written on a chalkboard today, but mechanically, the survival of this single suffix sets up quite a phonetic challenge. Which brings us to our final section, Section 4, Phonology of the S form, Pronunciation Rules. Let's get into it. And that challenge brings us to our final and frankly most exciting segment today. Get ready, because we're about to break down the highly specific, largely unconscious phonetic rules that govern exactly how that third-person singular suffix is spoken aloud. The S suffix actually exhibits three entirely distinct phonological realizations, technically known as allomorphs, based solely on the sound that immediately precedes it. First, we have the S phoneme. This happens following voiceless sounds, where your vocal cords do not vibrate. Notice the crisp, sharp endings in these examples. Caps, seats, seeks. Next up, we have the Z phoneme. This follows non-sibilant, voiced sounds. You can actually feel the vibration in your throat right now if you say plays, begs, comes. Finally, we have the is phoneme. This specific realization follows sibilant consonants, which are those hissing or hushing sounds like s, z, sha, or cha. Because you cannot easily pronounce two hissing sounds back to back, English forces an extra syllable, giving us words like passes, buzzes, catches. You know, it's a wonderful wry irony of academic linguistics that every single day millions of native speakers effortlessly execute these complex sibilant phonological rules flawlessly, all while having absolutely no idea what a sibilant actually is. But while the phonetic pronunciation changes wildly depending on vocal cord vibration and sibilants, the spelling is a whole different story. Orthographically, the S form remains relatively stable across the board. You generally just add the letter S. The main exceptions to this stability occur precisely when we are dealing with those tricky verbs ending in sibilants. Spelling rules step in to align the written word with that added is syllable. If a verb ends in a sibilant sound, spelled with a CH, SH, X, Z, or double S, we must orthographically add an ES. For example, watch becomes watches, box becomes boxes, wash becomes washes. It is a beautiful moment where the physical phonetics directly dictate the written orthography. As we bring this academic explainer to a close, I want to leave you with a provocative thought. We've examined the strict physical mechanics of phonemes and orthography, but let's return to the underlying theory for just a second. If the semantic present is indeed a broad category that stretches backward into the past and forward into the future, does the grammatical now truly exist, or is it merely a referential boundary we invent to anchor our language? Think about that the next time you use a simple present verb. Thank you so much for joining me, and keep questioning the mechanics of the words you use every day. See you next time.